I'm going to be doing some more ground driving prep with Dakota, and you've already seen a little bit of this, but I was using the protected contact, so I'm just going to speed through this real quick, but I'm just using the lash on my stick here to make some like a rubbing sound or a dragging sound over on the surcingle and up on that half pad, and once that sound's being made, I'm going to click and then give her a treat. So that's what you're seeing here. So right here I'm clicking and then feeding. And I'm just going to cruise through that because you've already seen that. It's just outside of the protected contact, but I just wanted to run through it real quick because I'm going to attach the drive lines today. So I'm going to make sure she was cool with that sound first and just do a quick review. But now I've got the drive lines out. I just have like the tree drive lines from Dover, nothing crazy, but it is important when you're getting drive lines that first they're long enough, and second they're either narrow enough or they have the rolled edges. And so these have the rolled ends, or like the rope or whatever the material is rolled so that it's narrow, so it'll go through the surcingle rings basically is what I'm going for. But yeah, because if you use a lot of lunge lines, they're just too thick. I wouldn't recommend that. It's going to get stuck. It's going to make your cues confusing, so we don't want that. Unfortunately you couldn't see what I was doing there, but I have the drive line run through that bottom ring on the surcingle, and then it's attached to the ring on her halter. And it was just a bad angle, but that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm just getting her used to that different kind of pressure of the rein aid, because she's not quite used to that. It's going to be more of a direct rein, more at that different angle where you'd feel from riding, and she's just not used to that. So there I kind of applied some pressure there, and she listened really well, so I click and give her a treat. So I'm just kind of applying some pressure, seeing if she'll steer and respond to that, and then clicking and rewarding as she does it. But that's the first kind of step after we've done all this sensitizing that you've seen in the last video and in this one. I really like this circle here. She has a nice bend in her body. A little slow and a little close, but nice bend. So you've seen all those other steps. This is the next step to get her ready for ground driving. And so this is different compared to what she's used to, because she's used to just that. It's also like a direct rein, but more lunging style, like up underneath her halter. So it's just something she has to get used to. Same thing with the swinging rope there. She's got to get used to that. She's got to get used to halting, standing away from me, not turning around, so turning and facing me. So a lot of different things that she has to get used to, but that looked pretty good. She seemed like she was pretty cool with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start attaching that other line. So I'm going to drive from this left side. So I'm just kind of tossing the end over so that I can put it on the surcingle and then attach it. So she just has a regular rope halter on. It's not super stiff, but it does have a like metal ring on each side. And I really like it for teaching steering because you're still in a halter, but you can make your cues a lot more direct with those rings on the side versus like putting underneath. That creates more of like a Boswell effect. So I really like this halter for teaching steering, but that's what she's got on. So I want her to go forward a couple steps, and then I can go ahead and toss that line up and over. Since this video, like I do a lot more ground driving, but I don't hold all the things up. It's a little bit trickier in a smaller space because you don't want your reins to get tangled. There I'm asking her to turn a little bit to the left. That was fantastic. Um, and especially with the mounting block, you don't want the lines to get tangled in there. You definitely don't want to get tangled, especially in this smaller space. Oh yeah, that was really nice. She's turning to the outside. That looks really good. I'm trying to get her to go forward because she wants to kind of turn and face me. So I don't want that. I want to keep her head up and away from me, which can be tough, especially with a lot of like natural horsemanship methods and things, because you teach them to face you, so that can be a bit tricky. Um, but yeah, so what I do now is I just let the lines drag. The horse I'm working with now is in the arena, which you'll see here in a little bit. There, she's kind of a little confused. I'm just kind of holding that outside rein, and she goes ahead and turns a little bit. She's still a little confused. There we go. That was really nice. I should have clicked and fed there. I might have. Yep. Okay. And then I'm trying to go up and give her a treat. There we go. So you have to be careful when you go up too, so the horse doesn't want to spin around and then get scared if that rope's behind them, or when it's touching them behind. So like they're like, yeah, you want to be able to just, if they get tangled like that, just drop a line, get them untangled, because it's you're gonna have a point where you drop the line, or like she's not tangled, it's just around the other side, but you want to make sure your horse is okay with that. So there's a lot of things going on with drive lines. Make sure your horse is desensitized first. That was really, really nice. Where she did that right turn away. That was really perfect. I should have rewarded her for that. That was really good. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of different things that go into ground driving. So that's one of the important ones. So you can see here that this is what I normally do with my lines. I just kind of let them drag, or I'll put them both between my legs so then they're not on either side of me. That seems to work best. That's how I like to hold them. But yeah, so make sure your horse is good with like dragging a rope, having ropes around their legs, having ropes behind them, and then like you've seen in the previous video where I did a lot of desensitizing above her and behind her with the ropes. Before you ever attach a drive line, please don't do that first. And then I find it's easier to do ground driving with positive reinforcement because if I click, my horse is going to stand there. So they're less likely to go and turn. And so I drop that outside rein there so she doesn't get confused and I kind of have a hold of her with that left rein. And then I can go ahead and pick that back up and continue driving here. So again, if your horse was worried about that, make sure that's not a thing. There, so she's a little confused still. There, she's figuring out. There, that was really nice. And she just kind of figured it out and went away from me. That's the hardest part, is getting the horse to turn away from you. And there I kind of tossed that line up over her hindquarters and laid it against, or laid it up on top of the surcingle. That's what I do now. So I do less of the laying the, I don't let the line get on the ground because I don't want the horse's legs to get tangled. Unless like it's come off or something like that. I would make sure your horse is desensitized to that for sure, because those things can happen. But now what I do when I go to feed is I put that line up over the surcingle so it's up out of the way and I can get to it and I still have it in my hand and I can go ahead and steer from that spot. So that's what I recommend doing for sure. And she's still again kind of struggling with having that steering away, so I'm applying pressure to that right rein and then I'm using the stick to kind of push her and make her go forward and shut that door to the left there. See, like there she's confused again. So I dropped that outside line. She's not worried about it, but she's very confused because I missed one step in doing this. I'm going to do it here in a second. Having her turn and follow that line around and like follow it all the way around to where she's standing away from you and comes back to face you. So I'm just going to unhook and take these lines off of her because that was definitely something I should have done. And I'm really, at the time, I really don't know why I did. I really don't. Probably what happened was, oh, she's so quiet, she'll be fine, she'll figure it out. Because that's what I did with most of the things where I messed up. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about here. So you kind of toss that line up over their head and then up around them and then step back. And she's got to figure out that she can turn away from me. That is very key, and I should have done that a while ago. I should have definitely, when you're teaching your horse to ground drive, do this lesson before you start to actually ground drive like I did, like I was doing. So horse has to be desensitized to the lines, has to already know how to steer a little bit and flex like in hand on the ground so they understand, they can follow that lead rope pressure, do like definitely lunging is good too. And then they're used to the lines being around them, behind them, moving around. All of that's prerequisites in this, where you're teaching your horse to follow that lead rope and to turn away from you. Those are all very important things. So that was my mistake. I really don't know why I didn't do it at the time. But yeah, definitely do this to your horse. This is a really important exercise because see, she's just her natural inclination is to follow me. You know, when you step back, they're supposed to follow, and she's all I'm trying to teach her here is follow that pressure of the rope, and then it will be released and you'll get a reward. And I'm clicking when she starts following it. So once she starts going around to the left in this scenario, then that's when I'm clicking, and then she's following around, and I'll give her the treat. So that looks much better. Um, Asking her to go forward here, but yeah, I definitely should have done that first. I'm not sure why I didn't, but yeah. So ask her to go forward. I'm just trying to get her to walk forward here, and there we go. She was kind of hesitant to go forward. So my next game plan here, because I've skipped a couple steps that I shouldn't have, was to go ahead and do some in-hand steering. So she's used to doing some steering, and steering away from me mostly is the important part. So I'm asking her to kind of turn to the left here, and she's kind of hesitant to go forward. She doesn't really quite understand what I'm asking her to do here. So I'm holding my left arm out so she follows that left rein over. Once she starts stepping left, I'm going to click and reward her here. This is the other important part that I mentioned that I didn't do. Because she'd done some lateral flexion and she did have some lunging done. So she does understand moving like toward the pressure and like giving to that. But she definitely didn't have any steering stuff done, or very little steering stuff done. And she definitely could use a refresher. There, that looks good. She's steering away from me. Good. She's gonna cross that, or take that right leg over, and then you see that big step with the right leg, and then that crossover step with the left leg, and I'm clicking and then feeding her here. So I'm just trying to get her stepping away and getting used to doing some steering in hand before I go back to doing some ground driving here. So just having her follow here to the left, that looks pretty good. So really I'm looking for that opening leg or the crossover leg. So there she had that left leg kind of open and come off to the left side toward me, which I'd asked her with my left rein. And then same thing going the other way. And then if I'm like asking, I'm just steering up over her neck there, like you can see here, like I'm got that right rein and I'm just asking her to go right. There we go. And then she takes that opening step with the right leg there. Good. That was nice. And then now I'm steering her to the left here. And she's a little confused. And then I can ask her to stop and back as well. That looks pretty good. Really, like, she's pretty solid on that. It's just helpful to do it in hand like that because you're just breaking the lesson down. You're not adding in the lines and standing behind her and doing all those things. So this is just a lot easier. You can be more clear and understand what it is you want, and you can explain it to the horse a little bit better. So ask her to move forward again. So I'm just putting my hand by the girth and like putting a little bit of pressure there, which would be my leg eventually. Then she'll go forward. And I'm asking her to halt there, and that looked really nice. What was the other thing that was important is, especially like when you're doing natural horsemanship stuff and when you're lunging, you ask the horse to turn and face you and stop. You can't really do that with the ground driving because of the lines. So I need to make sure she knows how to halt in hand, like like to the rein cues, so I can have her stop while I'm ground driving her. That's another big thing that I missed as in doing this. Like obviously she needs the steering, but she also needs the halt. So I needed to definitely work on that where she follows the rope around and turns around and faces me and does the steering in hand and the halt in hand. Those are all very important things that I kind of skipped. And you can see the aftermath or the result of me skipping them. And this is on a very, very quiet horse. That can go bad real quick. And probably like the reason that, I mean, definitely the reason that I did that was I was like, oh, she'll be fine. She'll figure it out because she's so quiet. She's so well bred. She's this, whatever. That's the same like ongoing theme that I have with everything is I expect way too much from her. I think, I mean, I know definitely if I was starting to do ground driving with the Mustang, it's like I would have never done that. But yeah, so that's important for horses like her to, there, that's some nice steering to the outside, good. Is to be like, okay, well, she's more internalizing things and she's more toward the shut down side versus the Mustangs, which will just run and have more flight than freeze. So um, that's important to think about. So definitely take your time and do all this stuff. But yeah, that's where I ran into that problem. I was like, oh, she'll just get it. Definitely doing a lot of inherent steering so they understand that, and then following that rope pressure around. So just asking her to steer. And she's still a little sticky, still a little confused, but we're getting better. At least I'm saying, okay, well she's confused with this, and we'll break it down and fix it. But if you had a horse that was a lot more sensitive, it could have gone a lot worse because especially when the lines are attached, they could start to panic, and we really don't want that.